Adirondack brook trout are beautiful. They have bright red and orange spots on their scales and an orange strip along their belly. They're a sensitive fish, sensitive to pollution, to crowds, and to climate change. State environmental officials have a new plan for managing brook trout to keep them thriving through the next decades. That's today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Pearsall Wealth Management at UBS Wealth Management USA, subsidiary UBS AG, member FINRA SIPC, 1 Broad Street, Glens Falls.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Thursday, January 29th. First up, lake effect snows keep pummeling Watertown, Jefferson County in the Tug Hill Plateau. The city of Watertown has seen more than 4 feet of snow in the last week. With more Arctic cold on the way, officials are urging people to take care. I spoke with Jefferson County Sheriff Peter Barnett this afternoon.
People have been shoveling, snow blowing, and plowing, for the last 2 weeks straight, really.
How are those conditions affecting your officers or affecting, residents or affecting the condition of the roads and stuff?
The roads have been extremely snow covered. The state, county, town crews have been doing a great job trying to keep up, but it's just been so voluminous with the snow. One of those old-fashioned winters. Lake effect, the wind, combined with the temperatures. Even though it's sunny out right now, even with salt that is going down as we speak, these roads are extremely still dangerous because they're so icy. Yes, please go the speed limit, if not a little bit under, and give plenty of leeway if you're behind somebody.
What are you most concerned with or sort of most dealing with, now going into the next sort of, 24 to 48 hours?
Is these, the deep freeze. I mean, you get in anything minus is very serious, but they're talking, minus 15, minus 20 plus, extremely dangerous. You want to be prepared. If you happen to slide off the road, or you get into an accident, don't panic. Call 911. That's what the sheriff's departments, the local police, and the state police are there for.
That's Jefferson County Sheriff Peter Barnett talking about snowy, windy, and cold conditions in Watertown and the surrounding area. For the first time in nearly 50 years, New York State has updated its plan to manage brook trout in Adirondack Ponds. The species is highly sought after by anglers, but it's also highly susceptible to ecological impacts such as acid rain and climate change. Emily Russell spoke with DEC fisheries biologist Rob Fiorentino about some of the key changes in the new management plan.
Why has it taken nearly 50 years for the state to update its management plan for brook trout in the Adirondacks?
It's not easy to create a plan, a good plan, and I think we have created a good plan. The last plan had a lot to do with impacts through acid precipitation and some other issues. And around 2010, we started to see some significant improvements in water where the pH was rising, getting more towards neutral or 7. Other parameters were getting back into ranges where fish and brook trout could survive, and not only survive, but actually spawn successfully. And that was the key. Because of that, and because of those changes and the recognition of some new pressures, climate change, it was time to create a new plan to address those current new impacts. And also, we're trying to be good stewards.
One big change, it seems, has to do with the use of live bait fish. And it seems like there was a lot of confusion and misunderstandings by anglers and bait shops about where it was allowed and wasn't allowed and the impact of live bait fish. So can you just kind of explain why the use of live bait fish poses such a risk to brook trout and how this plan changes those regulations?
Sure. So if you look at our current bait fish prohibition regulations, it takes up a number of pages in our regs guide, and it can be, I think, very confusing. We're managing by land mass. We would recognize a wilderness unit and then we would recognize ponds within towns, within counties. And like I said, I think it takes up 4 pages within the guide, and it's just a wall of text of here's where you can't use baitfish. That's not user friendly, nor is it very intuitive. And if you add up all those ponds, it's thousands of waters. And we really wanted to try to simplify that for the anglers, for us, and also for law enforcement, because at the end of the day, what we come up with as managers has to be enforceable, or else it's just not a good regulation and it's going to cause problems for the public. If we flip it on its head and say, okay, here's where you can use bait, it becomes much more understandable, tangible, and user friendly for all the above. And our feeling is through coordinating and communicating with the bait shops that it's not going to be a significant impact on their business. But what baitfish can do is forever alter the fish community in a body of water if they're introduced illegally.
How is climate change impacting brook trout, and how does this plan address those impacts and future threats?
So the waters can heat up to a point where they're not quite as sustainable for brook trout, which are a cold species. They have to live in cold, clean water. So when you heat up the surface, and occasionally in some of these waters, there's just not a lot of oxygen in the middle of summer at the bottom, you can end up kind of squeezing that area where they can survive down pretty significantly. So as climate change occurs, the average annual temperatures increase. We're kind of seeing some rain events that are a little bit outside of the historic norms when they're occurring and the volumes that they're occurring at. That can all lead to potentially, more stress on brook trout. So we wanted to get a plan drafted that would address that. And, we're trying to then be able to collect some information on that specific impact so that we're aware of, what waters might be more susceptible to this.
Are you an angler?
Yeah.
Particularly brook trout in the Adirondacks. Why are they such a special species and so fun to search out?
I think a lot of the allure for anglers is that you could be on a pond where there might not be another angler. You might be competing with some loons, and you might see, wildlife on the shore, and you find yourself transported back to that point in time where, the Adirondacks were set aside for a specific reason, and going after brook trout in a remote water, that is definitely something that a lot of people enjoy. And it's just unique and it's special. And brook trout are just, they're beautiful.
Mm.
In my mind, they're one of the most beautiful fish. So it's really easy to work with them.
Yeah. 10, 20 years down the line, what do you hope this management plan accomplishes, both for the brook trout population in Adirondack Ponds and for anglers?
I really hope that anglers will see that we're trying to do a good job managing this resource for them. We're trying to be a lot more transparent with where these resources are and what they are and how to get there. There will be a mapping program set up here soon within the next year or so, I hope, that will show anglers exactly where these ponds are and the trail systems to get to them. So that right there is, significant increase. Another thing that the plan does is it sets up a path for new biologists to learn from and to be able to continue the restoration efforts or to continue managing these resources in a significant way. So my hope is that, well after I'm gone, these recreational opportunities are persisting, they're more healthy, and we get more waters where we have natural reproduction. And that's ultimately one of our biggest goals, to document and establish more brook trout populations that we don't have to stock.
That was Rob Fiorentino, a fisheries manager in the Adirondacks, speaking with Emily Russell. The DEC just recently updated its management plan for brook trout in Adirondack Ponds. Music today by Caitlin Scholl of Lake Placid and Patricia Julian of Burlington. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.